All right. So, welcome to our series on Canadian media effectiveness discussions. This is an ongoing series that we're hosting at ARIMA. Of course, we're reaching out to people who are leaders in the brand space, the advertising space, measurement effectiveness space, media across the board. And today we have Peter Rodriguez. Peter's known as the Brand Igniter. We see Peter everywhere. He's at the CMA, he's at events, he's doing all sorts of things out there promoting his own personal brand and doing a great job of it. And of course, so that means we need to talk to him and find out what does he think about brands and where does that come from and hear his story. And so what I wanted to start off with is, a long time ago when I was at BBDO, somebody came up with this concept of what a brand is. And it's like a brand is a promise kept. And it seems to me that it's one of the best definitions of branding around. And, when I mentioned when we chatted earlier about this, you sort of went off on a whole bunch of angles on this. And so I think that's where we need to start today is. So tell us about what you think a brand promise and keeping it is all about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. And I'm delighted to join you and your audience. I also love this definition. And when I first heard it from somebody else, it made me think that a brand is only a name before it actually delivers. It's only a fancy name. Only when it actually delivers the promise, that's when it becomes a brand. And that's why it's so critical to keep your promises, because only then a brand acquires value. And I like it because it happens in a very specific way in people's minds. So, for example, brands live in the customer's mind. That's where they live, nowhere else. And they're in the realm of our desires, dreams, aspirations. And then when you make a promise and you keep that promise, then guess what happens? You develop trust.
Mm.
And what trust means is what it gives value to the brand, because then you have a bond with that name proven by the promise that it kept. So that's why I think it is incredibly valuable and it's applicable to every brand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, I mean, you've mentioned things when it doesn't quite line up, and you get into places where a brand is just a name or a brand is in distress, and it's a question of like, how can you get it back on track? So where does a person start?
Well, I think that you have to go back to the marketing mix. And that is something that we as marketers sometimes forget. We focus so much on the promotional aspect of brands
Mm,
that we forget that there is a ton of work to create the mix that goes before that. And
mm-hmm,
after we get someone to give us their first try or their trust, then that's when the real work starts, because you have to deliver the promise. And the promise is delivered by living up to the expectations on product performance or service performance or even an experience.
mm,
If you do not work really hard on that, and the marketer is responsible for that, not sales, not operations, everybody chips in, but really the marketer is at the core of that, then you miss the promise. Or it could also be on the distribution side. So if you're not in stock, if you're not visible, findable, distinguishable in the sea of sameness that you can find, let's say, in a grocery aisle, then you're also missing that promise. You're not there when I want it, when I need it.
mm.
So I would encourage all of my fellow marketers, if you want to actually deliver the promise, or if you have broken a promise, go back to the marketing mix and make sure that you're delivering each one of those things, because customers will not forget and will not forgive. So you have to deliver, and it starts right after they say, yes, let me try you. Then the big work starts.
Mm.
And that's what is usually missing in our conversations with the consumer.
So the framework starts with this marketing mix. It's not a media mix; it's a marketing mix of distribution and messaging and positioning. Um, is any of that quantifiable, and how do you use those numbers?
Well, certainly it's quite viable, because you define. I think that the biggest, if you go back to the start of where a brand begins, the need, desire for that particular benefit is what drives everything, not the product. It is the benefit that you promise. So if you articulate as a marketer your promise in a way that is both distinctive and relevant as a benefit to the consumer or customer, then everything else has to align: product quality, product lineup, pricing, promotional pricing, distribution, findability, online presence, and promotion with everything that it includes, including the media marketing mix, the media mix.
Hmm.
So it all works together. It's the media mix is incredibly important in order to make it visible. But behind that, there is all of the work that will make the promise come to life, deliver the promise, and create a brand.
Hmm.
That's why brands are really shortcuts. I mean, one of the problems with in the ad tech world these days is that we keep talking about funnels conversion, but it is unsustainable because we keep talking about getting people to go through the pages to understand value. If I already understand your value, you just need to keep the wheel moving. And that's the value of brands. You make more, you get a better ROI the better you use them, the better you build them. And for that, you have to deliver the mix.
Hmm. So, how much has ad tech actually changed the sort of brand strategy approach that you're looking at of distribution and sort of the everything across the spectrum there?
Well, the tech capabilities that we have in this decade are incredibly powerful, and we should be grateful for that. But at the same time, they can be incredibly distracting. So a lot of marketers have lost themselves in the details or the shiny objects of how good this technology is. In the end, it's only one more way to make things easier for the customer. And so if you think as a marketer, then you say, well, I have this new technology. I'm going to use that as a tool. I'm not going to subject myself or the brand to use it just because it's there. I'm going to use and leverage those abilities in a way that it makes me be capable of delivering that promise better. If you use that criteria, then you sift the good from the bad.
Hmm.
That is not happening today. A lot of the times, and I'm part of communities in the tech world, in the emerging technologies, where I don't hear this, and that's what I'm only I consider that to be my contribution and my service to tell them, make sure that you put strategy first, put the customer
Hmm.
first, make your promise about their desires, needs, and wants, and then only then think and pick the technology.
Hmm.
And that's when it works. And then you will find that you may stick to very few simple things, and the simpler it is for the customer, the better you'll be. Customers don't want complexity. They hate that.
Hmm.
We all hate that. And technology seems to be making things sometimes more complex.
Mm. One of the things that we, earlier when we were talking, we had mentioned sort of the difference between like junior level metrics and senior level metrics, and there's sort of like a graduation point in the middle where sort of the landscape changes of the types of metrics that the marketer pays attention to. Talk a little bit more about that because that was a surprise to me.
Indeed. Well, the I would say it should be an inverted pyramid. The people who run the business at the center of the action should be aware of the metrics that matter to the business, the brand, and the company. If they're not aware of those, they may be developing metrics that don't matter. So, for example, um, I have been in meetings where people start talking, well, the click through rate and all of the views that we're getting on this, and no one is talking about how that is helping me change someone's perception about the brand. How is this getting the brand to mean something for customers that they can then spend more money on or pay more for? Those, and that is, I think, the bridge you're referring to. I
Mhm.
want higher margins as a senior leader. Okay, I want to make sure that that I margin up the portfolio,
Yeah.
but that is not going to happen if the consumers don't give me permission to do that. And they give me permission only when they're happy to pay more because they believe that this brand is worth more. And that is the role of the marketer to make sure that everything lines up to do that. Now, for that, if I am in the junior levels, I need to know that everything I'm doing is creating that value. And anything else that is not delivering that are metrics that are probably just nice to know. But the big metrics have to do with, are you getting me to believe that this brand is worth more and that I should pay more money for it more frequently and all the time and feel happy about it?
So this I mean, it sounds like a perfect example. What you're explaining is Apple, where very rarely does it go on sale, and the price points are the price points.
That's a great example, Chris.
Yeah.
Anyone can, when anyone has to compete on price, is because they have nothing else to say. And I advise all my clients and every brand that I touch, never compete on price. You don't have to do that unless you have nothing else to say.
Mm.
If you degrade the value of your brand by lowering your price, you're telling me as a consumer, oh, that's what you're really worth. Oh, you were gouging me before. You're really worth 80, not 100. So you're
So I guess,
teaching me to expect for the next price point.
yeah. So the temporary price reductions and things, these are, I mean, helping generate volume. They help generate sort of a short-term market share growth, but it's kind of like the sugar candy, which you sort of have a hangover afterwards of now you have to fix the brand side of things because of the sort of the balance of sales versus the strength of the brand. How do marketers avoid that? Like is that sounds like it's something that's not an easy fix.
It is very hard to do, and it becomes almost like dependency. You become dependent on that. I've worked on brands that have their big sale of the year and they cannot get out of that circle. The cycle is already, well, in November we do a big push for the season, and then if they don't do that, their numbers suffer. Now, it when you look at the actual consumption side, consumption in home doesn't really change that much unless it is a truly seasonal product. But
Mhm.
if you pushing those practices, you're only mortgaging your results for down the road, because you're going to get the short-term sales. Of course, you're going to make the year, the quarter, and report your profits down to Wall Street. Perfect. However, you're teaching people to buy on deal. And once that they know that, they do that. That's horrible. There are categories on consumer packaged goods where in Canada, 80%, almost 80% of the volume goes on TPR, on temporary price reduction. Whereas in the
Mhm.
US, sometimes the same category could be 50% or 40%.
Mhm.
Why are we teaching ourselves to buy on deal? The only thing that we're telling consumers is this is not worth it. This brand,
Mm.
wait until you can find it on deal. So pricing, that's why it's a strategic marketing decision. It's not a sales decision. It's a strategic marketing decision because it reinforces or destroys the brand value that you're creating. And
Mhm.
Apple is a great example. They are giving you value and they stand by the quality of the brand, not their product only. It's the brand that you're buying.
Mhm. Okay. So I'm curious, like, I mean, your career, where did you learn this, and sort of at what point in time did you sort of, you know, go through all your learning and sort of start bringing it together as like let's understand brands at a deep level.
Well, I think, Chris, it happened when I was moving from advertising into brand management. I had the opportunity to work for great agencies like Leo Burnett and JWT early in my career. And those years taught me that the consumer rules. The consumer is the one thing that we need to understand, feed, nurture, preserve, and make sure that they develop habits. So
Mhm.
I had great teachers on that side of the business that when I moved into brand management, I brought that as an asset to me because as I was learning the other parts of the business as a junior brand manager way back when, I it allowed me to put everything in that perspective. So manufacturing, logistics, sales, customers, and all of the funnels that we had in order to drive distribution, everything had to make sense, and that's been my philosophy all around. If it doesn't work for the consumer, it doesn't work for anyone. It will not work for us. It will not work for the shareholders, and it will not work for the customer either. So I think that and over time, as I was working on a number of brands and that allowed me the opportunity to develop my career at a fast pace, become a CMO at Warner Lambert back then, before moving into a role in the US and later on into Canada. But then my philosophy around this I continue to better understand what I was thinking and perfect my ideas based on the more brands that I was running and the more brands that I was touching. So I think it was the place when I moved from advertising to brand management, which became my career after all.
Hmm. And what was it like moving from, like, sort of being within a large company, and now you're on your own doing sort of this coaching and the brand igniter side of the things? What has changed for you in that process?
Well, I think that it broadened the number of and the kinds of problems that I am resolving now. For 3 decades almost, I was mostly working on consumer packaged goods problems and brands. And now, ever since I opened up Brand Igniter, I've had the opportunity to work on great problems from different industries and different verticals, and prove that the philosophy is around the consumer, the customer, and creating that promise and keeping that promise actually works. So I work now with clients from um, higher education, for example, um, from advertising are my clients, and consumer packaged goods and pharmaceuticals. And the only reason why it works, and even for tech companies, it's because it's human based. At the end of the day, it is about what we as humans react to, and that is something that is the same across the four continents that I have the opportunity to work with clients. People are people. Dreams, desires, aspirations are the same. We express them a little different, but at the end of the day, at the core, we are responsive to very similar things. That's the big surprise. So that's one. The other one is that it gave me the opportunity to be more with my family and spend much more time with them, because especially after the pandemic. So that has been
Right.
a very big win.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you've moved into some different sectors of advertising. Is there one, sort of sector that you really think, coming out of the pandemic, or whatever's happening these days, how we're going to describe it, that really needs to sort of refocus itself on branding?
Well, yes, there are quite a few. I think consumer packaged goods could use that reframing again, because it has become a lot about the short term. And companies who actually continue to build brand value, they win. There is a very large study out there from leading insights company who that has proven that the more you build brand value, the more you outpace the stock market. And that is only because we're building value in behind these brands. And consumer packaged goods would be one example that could benefit from that. I think technology brands, technology emerging companies could benefit in a big way to do this. And I noticed by listening to entrepreneurs in this space that many of them are so focused on the product that they forget about the how consumers, customers, and end users will perceive it. So I usually have to just start with the basics. I mean, it's not about the product. The product is a reason to believe. What is it the benefit that it is creating for the end user? And as simple as that is, Chris, sometimes we forget that, and we all can do that. That is something that happens to anyone. Inward looking planning, inward looking thinking is something that is very silent, and we can all fall into that. So the technology area could benefit in a big way by simplifying things. And let me say that I think the key for all of this is being simple. The hardest thing is to express, let's say in 6 words, the benefit for the customer. Because if it is understandable, then people can repeat it to others and say, well, look at this. This is doing this fantastic thing for me.
Mm.
So and we don't spend enough time to do that. Now, that takes a good amount of effort to be able to do that, because it is so consumer centric that it allows you to do it in such a small amount of words.
Interesting. I mean, I was talking to somebody in ad tech, um, And one of the things that they mentioned was about the simplicity, and they pointed out that, one of the reasons why the digital platforms are doing so well is that they're actually very simple to set up a campaign. The friction between the starting point and having a campaign up and running on a credit card versus traditional media, there's a huge difference. And it actually may have very little to do with the difference of the media. It's actually the simplicity and the ease of buying.
Indeed, yeah, and that is the trick. The simpler the technology is, either to set up a campaign, buy a campaign, get a customer to look at your benefit, the more powerful it will be.
Mhm.
Now, that is easier said than done, because sometimes, and I was looking at a post recently on social media about, this is all you need to build a business, and it was like a 1 to 10 list of all the technology you need. Fantastic, you
Right.
can do it in a day.
Yeah.
But there was nowhere in that post the word brand, the word customer, or the word strategy.
Okay.
So you can have all of that, but if you're not thinking broadly enough about what problem are you solving, what problem are you making go away, how does this make my life easier, then it doesn't work. And on the other hand, you have something that is as brilliant as Uber. Uber is so seamless. I mean, you don't have to do much in order to become addicted to using that. So the shorter the journey to create a habit, the better. And I would love to speak briefly about habits, because at the end of the day, you we make more money with brands the more they become habits. We
Mhm.
we bypass a lot of steps for the consumer, so that they just say, well, I want this, then I'm going to go to this brand. I want easy technology, no problems, I'm going to Apple. That's what
Mhm.
you want, instead of having
Mhm.
to explain every time all of the reasons to believe for Apple. And that becomes a habit, and habits are powerful. Maybe if I were to say, one of the most valuable things that we can do as marketers is to align people to adopt the habits that benefit our brands. And that is the holy grail. Everything else is just a means, because that is what's going to create value for the P&L. That's what's going to create an asset that actually becomes valuable, because it's delivering a promise every time.
Mhm. All right. So what I'm taking from that is customer experience, the customer experience design of, if it is a technology, the customer experience becomes a big part of the actual branding of itself, the ability to reduce the friction, create habits, also in a way of gamification, just allowing you to go deeper and deeper into the platform, giving you new sort of reasons to cement the habit with you. And again, it sort of comes back to what you were saying in the very beginning, which is about the margin, right? So the metrics of ease of use, the metrics of reuse, the metrics around the margin of the revenue, these start to come to the fore as the kinds of things that the marketer has to pay attention to as part of the expressions of their strategy, their ability to fix a problem, a consumer centric problem. Um, Thank you. I mean, that's
Indeed.
that's really powerful stuff, and it has nothing to do with, as you say, the little list of various technologies that you can cobble together.
That's right, because you will have a new list next year. The new
In the
shiny new
US, actually, yeah.
so so it is, you always have to have that, but that's the green fee. You need to just be, today it is the metaverse, tomorrow is going to be the whatever verse, but it is going to be never ending. But the thing is that it is it is always going to be about the customer. No matter how things change, at the end it's going to be about solving something valuable for the customer. And I would like to say something. You made a fantastic summary of how these things connect. One of the best tools, if I may suggest, one of the best tools that a marketer can use is the brand review. A brand review that incorporates, where are we? Why are we there? Where could we be? How do we? That, as simple as that, in one page that summarizes those pieces, gives direction gives structure, gives logic to a conversation with senior management, and avoids all of these side conversations that can derail a brand's direction. But in that brand review that I referred to would have a very good summary of what you just described.
Mm-hmm. And how often should they do
Metrics
that with
from
your
media,
agency?
from the sorry.
How often should they do that? I mean, it sounds like something you should really do in collaboration with your agency, right? Just, your creative agency, your media agency, all your agencies to sort of, as a brand review, you really sort of take the step back. It sounds like it's not just internally you do that.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. The agency or agencies that help you would be a big contributor. In my experience, when I was running a whole marketing group, I instituted two practices. One of them was the annual brand review before planning,
Yep.
but also the monthly reviews, which was a meeting where the brand manager, one of my brand managers, would stand up in front of an audience of marketers and key partners like agencies, like media agencies, advertising agencies, and so forth, to review those elements. I mean, where are we? How did we drive success? How did we did not get success? Where is the brand going? And what are the things to do? And it included a very brief review of the financials, because that is also critical. I mean, this is our plan. This is how we're doing versus the plan. This is how we're going to fix the brand going forward. So, brand managers who came out of these meetings, we're ready for conversations with very senior people. So in my presentations to the home office from the US, I wanted my brand managers to actually do part of the presentation because they were ready to discuss the brands in depth from a strategic perspective. So that's a suggestion that I always bring up to my clients. As much as possible, do this in the way you described it, Chris. Bring in the key partners and do a very focused monthly review that makes the brand review on a yearly basis just be a breeze. You don't have to sweat it because you have 12 months of deep analysis on the brand.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you for your time. This has been a great conversation. Do you have like one final thought, one piece of advice that you'd say, like, if you were to start off tomorrow, what's the number one thing a brand manager should sort of wake up tomorrow with a cup of coffee and think about?
Of course, I do. I think that the number one thing is put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Think and view the world as the customer first, and then look at yourself and your plans and your company and your brand and everything else from that perspective. That is a source of reflection that will open up a ton of conversations, a ton of ideas, and question yourself. Don't follow the technology that you have at hand just because it's interesting or shiny. It is only a servant. Technology is your servant. You're not a servant to technology.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, and we'll carry on with some of your thoughts on our side. I mean, we're building our own brand, and you've already helped us with a few sort of key insights. So thank you so much.
Thank you
And
for the invitation, Chris. It's a
yeah.
pleasure.
All right, chat again soon, Peter.
Chat again.
Bye.
Bye.